During a globally televised World Cup final, the world watches in horror as a portal rips open in the sky. Out of the vortex emerge armed soldiers, not from another country but from another time. Their leader announces a chilling truth: they are humanity from 30 years in the future, and they are losing a war against an alien species. Without help from the past, all human life will be extinguished in less than a year. They need their parents and grandparents to fight beside them. This is humanity's last hope. Our story begins 28 years earlier with Dan Forrester, a former Green Beret turned high school biology teacher. Despite a loving family, he feels unfulfilled, constantly seeking a more impactful job in a prestigious research lab. His military experience, however, doesn't translate well to the private sector, and rejection becomes a familiar sting. At a Christmas party, while watching the fateful World Cup match with his daughter Muri, the world changes forever. Muri, a brilliant and inquisitive child, tells her father she wants to be the best, just like him in science. He tells her the key is to be willing to do what nobody else is willing to do, a philosophy that will soon define his life. 1 year after the future soldiers' arrival, the world is in turmoil. A worldwide draft is instituted to send civilians into the future to fight the aliens, known as the White Spikes. With a survival rate of less than 20%, global protests erupt, questioning the morality of fighting a future war. Dan's classroom reflects this despair. His students see no point in their education when humanity's extinction seems inevitable. He tries to inspire them, arguing that science and innovation are what the world needs most. But his words fall on deaf ears. Soon, his own notice arrives. He has been drafted. At the processing center, the procedure is cold and invasive. They install a jump band on his arm, a device that tracks him and facilitates time travel. Then comes the most chilling revelation. They show him his own death certificate from the future. He is destined to die in 7 years. The only way to be drafted is if you are already dead in the future, preventing a paradox of meeting your older self. They refuse to tell him how he dies, only that it is a certainty. Faced with this grim fate and the threat of his wife being drafted in his place if he flees, Dan feels trapped. Desperate, his wife suggests he seek help from the one person who knows how to disappear, his estranged father. Dan reluctantly agrees, driving to his father's isolated home, a place he hasn't visited in years. His father, a cynical and anti-government recluse, is an expert at living off the grid. He examines the jump band, confident he can remove it, but the reunion is fraught with bitterness. Dan confronts his father about abandoning the family, calling him a coward. His father reveals his own post-Vietnam trauma, claiming he left to protect them from his own violence and anger. The argument escalates, and Dan leaves, telling his father he'll never meet his granddaughter. There are no second chances. With no way out, Dan accepts his fate. He says a heartbreaking goodbye to Muri, promising her he will come back. At the training facility, he meets his fellow draftees, including the nervous but brilliant scientist Charlie, and Dorian, a hardened veteran on his third tour. Dorian wears a white spike claw around his neck, a grim souvenir from one of the first aliens ever killed. Suddenly, their 7-day training is cut short. An emergency deployment is called. A vital research lab in the future is under attack. Untrained and unprepared, they are told their destination is Miami Beach. As the countdown begins, they are told to expect a small drop of 5 to 10 feet. But something goes terribly wrong. The jump coordinates are off. They aren't dropped a few feet. They are falling from the sky into a city in flames. Dan and a handful of others survive the fall by landing in a rooftop pool, only to find themselves in the ruins of a burning Miami. The mission commander, a voice on the radio, informs Dan that the city is overrun and will be cleaned by a blanket bombing. Their new objective is to rescue the research team from the besieged lab before the bombs fall. Drawing on his military past, Dan takes charge, leading the terrified survivors through the war-torn streets. They reach the lab, only to find the research team has been slaughtered, their bodies cocooned to the ceiling. The commander directs them to retrieve biological samples. As they do, they are ambushed in a dark stairwell. It is their first encounter with the White Spikes. The creatures are terrifyingly fast and agile. A flurry of white limbs and razor-sharp teeth. A frantic firefight ensues as they desperately try to escape down the spiral staircase. They burst out into the street just as the bombing run begins, red smoke marking the kill zones. In a chaotic race against time, they fight their way through hordes of aliens as military jets scream overhead, raining fire upon the city. Dan and the few remaining survivors narrowly escape the inferno, having completed their mission but at a devastating cost. The survivors are transported to a forward operating base in the Dominican Republic, one of the last human strongholds. Here, Dorian explains his own fatalistic philosophy. Diagnosed with cancer, he would rather die fighting in the future than slowly wasting away back home. Dan is then summoned to meet the commander, the woman whose voice guided him through the hell of Miami. As they talk, a shocking realization dawns on him. The commander, a decorated colonel and brilliant scientist, is his daughter, Muri. She has become the very person he always hoped she would be, a leader at the forefront of science, now leading the fight for humanity's survival. Muri explains that their only hope is a toxin. While it kills the male white spikes, it is ineffective against the more powerful and rarer females. She has a plan to capture a live female to study its unique physiology and develop a toxin that will eradicate the species. Dan joins the mission. As they fly to the nesting site, Muri reveals the truth of his future. He didn't die in combat, but in a car accident, after abandoning his family. She recounts the pain of his divorce and his growing unhappiness, culminating in his death on her 16th birthday, a trauma that has haunted her ever since. The mission to capture the female is a brutal success. In the chaos, Muri is gravely injured and Dan defies her orders to save her. With the captive alien secured, Dan confronts his daughter, furious at her accusations. He insists he would never leave her. Back at the lab, a floating fortress in the ocean, they work together against the clock to synthesize the new toxin. In this desperate crucible, they finally begin to reconnect. He sees the brilliant woman she has become, and she sees the father she always wanted. Muri reveals her true plan. Dan was brought to the future not just to fight, but to take the completed toxin back to his own time and prevent a war from ever happening. It is a suicide mission for her and everyone in the future, a sacrifice to give the past a second chance. Dan refuses to leave her behind, promising to save the world with her. At that moment, they achieve a 100% bond on the toxin. They've done it, but their victory is short-lived. The captive female's cries have drawn a massive swarm of male white spikes. The base is overrun. They fight their way to the helipad, a desperate escape through collapsing corridors and swarms of aliens. Muri is mortally wounded. In her final moments, she gives her father the toxin and tells him she loves him. As a white spike lunges, Muri pushes him away, sacrificing herself. Dan is jumped back to his own time, watching his daughter fall to her death. He awakens in the present, clutching the precious vial. But hope is gone. The jump link has been destroyed. Contact with the future is permanently severed. The world descends into chaos, believing their fate is sealed. But Dan now holds the key. He realizes the aliens didn't arrive in 2048. They were already on Earth, having crashed here centuries ago and frozen in ice. Using a volcanic ash sample from Dorian's white spike claw and the geological expertise of his former student, they pinpoint the crash site in northern Russia. The government refuses to sanction a mission into hostile territory based on a teacher's theory, so Dan takes matters into his own hands. He recruits Charlie, a guilt-ridden Dorian, and his own father, who provides a plane for the unsanctioned mission to save the world. They locate the alien ship, buried deep within a Russian glacier. Inside, they make a terrifying discovery. The white spikes are not the pilots, they are cargo, a bioweapon, created by another alien race to clear planets. As they prepare to inject the toxin into the dormant aliens, a female awakens, triggering a chain reaction. The ship comes alive with screeching horrors. In the ensuing battle, Dorian sacrifices himself to blow up the ship and the majority of the colony, taking his second chance to die on his own terms. But one escaped. The Queen. The team hunts her down across the frozen landscape for a final, brutal confrontation. Dan's father is grievously wounded. In a moment of ultimate redemption, he draws the Queen's attention, allowing Dan to deliver the final killing blow. The war is over before it ever began. The world is saved. Dan returns home, not as a forgotten teacher, but as a hero who changed the future. He finally introduces Muri to the grandfather she never would have known, healing the wounds of 2 generations. He learned that his best future was never in a different job or a different life. It was always right in front of him.